어느덧 마지막 강연이 준비되어 있습니다. 이번 시간에는 유통산업의 모든 측면에서 빅데이터가 발전하는 구체적인 사례를 살펴보도록 할 텐데요. 세계적인 빅데이터 전문가 데이비드 스테펜슨이 빅데이터와 머신러닝이 유통기업에서 수행해야 할 과제들을 어떻게 개선하고 있는지에 대해서 발표하도록 하겠습니다. 참고로 데이비드 스테펜슨은 미국 코넬대에서 박사학위를 받았고 펜실베니아대 교수를 역임했으며 현재는 네덜란드 소재 DSI 애널리틱스 대표로 활발히 활동하고 있습니다. 여러 사정상 저희가 사전에 녹화한 영상으로 준비했고요. 번역 자막도 함께 준비했습니다. 자, 그럼 여러분의 박수와 함께 영상 시작하도록 하겠습니다.
Hi everyone, good to be with you now. Today I'll be talking about how big data and machine learning are improving many different tasks that distribution companies need to carry out. Let me start with a brief introduction to who I am and my background as it relates to the topic. So I'm currently Managing Director of DSI Analytics, which is a company that helps other companies improve their use of data and analytics. In addition, I'm part-time faculty at the Business School of the University of Amsterdam, previously part-time faculty of the University of Pennsylvania back when I lived in the United States. I've written several books on the topic of big data and applied analytics. One of those books has already been translated into many languages, including into Korean. And another thing that I've done quite a bit of is to serve as conference program chair for international machine learning conferences. So in this capacity, I've been working with a lot of companies around the globe as they present their research and their developments as it relates to big data and machine learning in an applied setting. So some of the companies that I've worked with, either through my own consulting or through the conference setting, have been companies like Amazon, Alibaba, Adidas, Tommy Hilfiger, and eBay, as well as some other companies that are very big in their local geographies, but which you may not have heard of. Companies such as Coolblue, which I'll mention later. Okay, so in the next half hour or so that we have, I'd like to focus on 6 specific topics. Okay, these are areas where machine learning and big data are really helping change how we execute. The first topic is in digital marketing. So digital marketing is how do we identify potential customers, bring them to our store, to the environment where they're likely to make a purchase. Digital marketing is really huge. When you look at a company like Adidas, which several years ago published its annual marketing budget as 4 billion euros. So companies spending 4 billion euros on marketing alone, you can start to understand why it's such an important topic and why we want to leverage every bit of data and analytics that we can to improve it. Then I'll go on to talking about the point of sale. Once we have the customer here, how do we increase the likelihood that they make a purchase, increase the value of that purchase? Then, of course, behind the scenes, we have all the inventory, the supply chain, a lot of costs going on with that. We want to minimize the costs. We also want to make sure we minimize the risk of damage. We want to get the product to the customer as quickly and as safely as possible. So again, there's going to be a number of ways that companies like Amazon are going to use big data and analytics to improve how they're doing the supply chain, managing inventory, which eventually, of course, leads to the ultimate product delivery. So we want to make sure that this is done as well as possible. And there's going to be tools for that. After I talk about these 4, I want to talk about 2 specific types of technology, which are being especially helpful across the 4. And those are going to be computer vision and robotics. Good. So let's start in with digital marketing. When you're a company who's looking to improve your digital marketing and you want to use data and analytics, there's 4 primary challenges that you're going to focus on. Okay. The first challenge that a marketing analyst has is in targeting. So how do I reach the right audience with my products? The second is activation. Once I have the right audience, whether it's people that I'm reaching out to, or perhaps someone who's already in my customer database who I'm sending an email to, how do I activate them, bring them to the point where they want to make a purchase? The third is the analysis. Okay, I see that a purchase is made. I see that there's activity from my customer. How do I draw insights from that? And the fourth is monitoring. So I can make sure that as my campaigns are running, as my social media is out there, I can see how effective that's being. Now, of course, underlying all of these challenges is the fact that we're operating primarily in a digital space. So if I think about my customers, it may be that I have very little face-to-face contact with them. If I'm in an omni-channel environment, I may be able to connect the physical visits with the digital visits. And this is something that also companies are working to improve their ability to do, to have loyalty programs or things like that, so that people who come in a store can be matched to people who subscribe by email, or sign up to a mailing list, that type of thing. But in general, what companies are doing is they're looking to identify the digital footprint of their customers and prospective customers as much as possible. And this is going to take a lot of effort, and it has to be done in a smart way. Companies start by learning as much as they can about their customers using the first-party data that they own. So this is key in terms of having control of their data assets, understanding not only what their own customers have purchased, but also what their customers have browsed, how they've responded to campaigns, and possibly even collecting and linking data from how their customers have made posts on social media and other public platforms. So this is the first step that companies do, is mastering their own first-party data to get as much insight and understanding about which of their customers do what kind of actions, have what kind of preferences, are the most valuable, that type of thing. So really getting that control of your own audience using your own data. The next thing a company is going to do in digital marketing is link with a third party and use their insights that they've generated about their customers to reach out to potential customers on third-party platforms. So this is what's important to understand, is that I have my own view of the customer based on what I've seen the customer do. But if I look at, for example, Google has a different view of your customer base. Why is that? Well, it's because when I, as a potential customer, log into a Chrome browser, when I use Gmail, when I do a Google search, or use YouTube or Google Maps, I'm telling Google a lot of things about me, about my interests, and about my preferences. So Google is also using its own big data to build up an understanding of the customer base. Same thing is happening with Facebook. Any information that Facebook has, which is going to be slightly different type of information, that information can be used for Facebook to build up a profile of potential customer bases. So when I go to a Google, when I go to a Facebook, an Instagram, a LinkedIn, and say, this is the type of customer that I want to reach out to with my digital marketing, I'm starting with my understanding of the customer from my data, but I'm linking it to their understanding of potential customers from their data. Okay, so it's important to get that part right. Some companies also use what's called a DMP, a digital marketing platform, which will do a similar process using third-party cookies, generally not as effectively, but there are some advantages to that. Okay, so once I've sort of linked with a potential digital marketing partner and told them, okay, this is the type of customer I want to reach out to, then of course they're able to show my advertisements high up the funnel as display ads so that I generate interest in someone who maybe was reading the news, but suddenly sees an advertisement for a digital camera. Or I can target lower down the funnel, which is typically the search engines, right? So someone who already knows they want to look for a digital camera, they're searching for one. Now I can tell Google, please display my advertisement along with the search results. So this is more the mid-funnel, the paid search. Okay. But now it's important that as we're driving our digital marketing, we're more and more mature in the targets and KPIs that we choose. Okay, so this is what companies are progressively doing better and better. Because at the very basic level, we're talking about just paying for clicks. Okay, so I've got, I'm targeting traffic and I'm measuring it in terms of the cost per click. But at a more advanced level, I'm saying, okay, well, I don't want people just to come to my website. I actually want them to make a purchase. Okay, so I'm targeting sales and I'm tracking the cost per acquisition. Then I realized, okay, well, not every sale is as profitable as other sales. So I wanted to start targeting the customers who bring in a lot of revenue. Okay, so now I'm looking at something like a ROAS metric. I'm targeting increased revenue. So what's happening now is in my digital marketing, I'm identifying my customers, my visits who are bringing a lot of revenue, and I'm using that to communicating to my marketing platform, such as a Google. Okay, so I'm saying, don't just bring me random clicks that don't convert. Bring me the clicks that bring a lot of revenue. Google then can start to look at its big data insights into its customer base and say, I think that such and such a potential customer is going to be someone who buys a high value item. Okay. At this point, it's all in some sense public information because on my website, I've listed a price for an item. I know that this camera is 100 euros. Okay. Google can say, I'm going to bring you customers who, through my insights of the customer, I think it will buy the camera that's worth 100 euros. Now I'm going to take a step further and I go into the proprietary information that's not public, but which is important for you in digital marketing. Okay. This is something like the profit. Okay. The profit so that everyone knows your camera costs 100, but they don't know that your profit on the camera is 20 or 40 euros. Okay. What I really want is I want Google to send me, or Facebook or whoever, to send me those customers who are going to make high profit purchases. And then the ultimate step, the next step, is really what we want to shoot for. It's the customer lifetime value. So I want to pay to attract customers who are not just going to make purchases today, but over the course of the next several years are going to bring me the most profit. Okay. This is the golden target that we want to go for with digital marketing. And this is where we want to use our data to best understand what customers are going to have the highest customer lifetime value. Okay. This is what companies are striving to understand. Because once you understand which customers have the highest lifetime value, you can start to target them, communicating to a Google or a Facebook or a LinkedIn to say, please bring me those customers. Okay. And there's specific ways to do that communication that I won't go into, but it's there are some nuances to that. Good. Not only digital marketing, but also our direct marketing through our own CRM systems, our own emailing systems is going to be very useful for activation. So here's where a company will use its data to say, I've got a product. I want to push that product by email. Who should I send that email to? Obviously, I can't spam my whole database with every product, so I need to be selective. So companies will start to compute purchase propensity scores. What's the likelihood that this customer will purchase this product if I send them the email? Okay. And again, these scores, these propensity scores, are going to be a combination of all the different data that I have on the customer. Not only what the customer's purchased, but what browsing behavior they've done, what interactions they've done with previous emails, what they've done on social media, that type of thing. And then finally, there's the analysis. So companies have teams, sometimes dozens or hundreds of analysts looking at the marketing data, looking at the KPIs that come back from their marketing campaigns, looking at the clickstream data. When someone comes to my website from a campaign, what is it that they browse? What do they add to their basket but not purchase? What patterns and associations do I see? So it's important to have the people, to have the tools to analyze the marketing data so that we can do smarter, more effective marketing. Because as I mentioned before, a lot of money, a lot of effort goes into digital marketing. Okay, so now moving on to the point of sale efforts. So we've spent a lot of money, put a lot of effort into getting customers to our storefronts. So typically this is going to be a digital storefront. It could also be, of course, a physical. A lot of companies are working in omni-channel, so you want a good integration between different digital exposure points and also physical exposure points. But in general, we've got them to the point of sale, and we're wondering, how can I use the data and the analytics to improve the likelihood that they'll make a purchase and also to increase the value of that purchase, whether it's through pushing them towards the items that are most interesting for us to sell, or else perhaps pushing additional items, recommending additional items for them to sell in a sort of cross-sell manner. So the first thing to focus on, and perhaps the most important thing, and again, this is something that companies have been doing for a long time, so it should not be new to most people, but I want to emphasize it's really critical to master A/B testing. When you look at business applications of big data, especially for a distributor, for an Amazon, for an eBay, the most critical business application of big data is to help with A/B testing. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm using A/B testing, split testing, they call it multivariate testing, essentially to test different versions of my website, different pages, different fonts, different layouts, different sizes, different colors. Everything gets tested. Okay, and I choose the version which is the best. Why is this the big data problem? Well, because I'm putting the different versions out and then I'm recording everything that happens when my customers come and visit. So I've got thousands and thousands of customers visiting. Each visit is hundreds of actions, clicks, scrolls, that kind of thing. And in combination, these are going to give me a lot of insights into the primary KPIs, the secondary KPIs, correlation effects and such, right? So A/B testing is really critical to master for your points of sale. Then also, we talked about understanding your customer with digital marketing. This also comes into play when you're talking about your point of sale. Okay, so the big data is going to help us understand our customer. There's going to be machine learning models that come into play here. And as I understand the customer, as I experiment with what works or doesn't work, I'm going to move into personalizing the point of sale. Okay, so I'm going to show you, here's just a basic example. On the left, I've got the Amazon landing page when I haven't logged in. And on the right, I've got the landing page after I have logged in with my own account. Okay, so it's being personalized for me. It's going to show me the banners that are most relevant, the items that are most relevant. Possibly it's going to show them intentionally to say, I see you've looked at this before, here are the items again. Possibly it'll show me the items without specifically saying that they were meant for me. But in the background, the website, the company is putting those items there because it knows that I have a high likelihood to purchase them because of what it knows about me. Even if it doesn't know who I am, even if I'm not logged in, companies are still using the data they have to modify the website, the point of sale on the fly. Again, a basic example from Amazon. On the left is my first landing, not logged in. On the right is my second landing. Again, not logged in, but I have an existing cookie, so it knows that it's my return visit. And companies are also using not just the fact that I'm a returning visitor, but a lot of the other data they may have about me. Things like the time of day, the geography, the browser settings that I have. Okay, my language, what kind of operating system, am I coming from a Mac or a PC? Okay, these things are all used to help personalize the point of sale. Okay, that's just the layout. When I get to the search results, this is also really key. Because if I search for a digital camera, Amazon could show me hundreds or thousands of different search results, which are very relevant to digital cameras. It wants to show me the results which are most likely for me to make a high value purchase on their site. So it's important that the search results on a site like Amazon are also personalized based on what they know about me as a customer. Okay. This is something, again, that can be done if I'm logged in. It can also be done on the fly if you're smart about it, because I'm learning about my customer as they go through and navigate my site, even if they're not logged in. Then, of course, there's the cross-sell opportunity. So I put something in my basket. I want to recommend something. This is something which is a combination of the historic purchase data, the browsing data, which also becomes a big data question, and machine learning algorithms. And again, it can be done anonymously or personalized based on the customer. Natural language processing is becoming more and more important. In order to increase the likelihood of a purchase, I want to make my customer comfortable with the product, get them excited about the product. By harvesting customer reviews, I have the basic raw material to help encourage my customer to understand and want to buy the product. But I need to use some sort of natural language processing to make those reviews more palatable, something that can easily be summarized and my customers can easily get insights from them. Okay, this is where I'm using machine learning, the unstructured text data, and I'm gathering that together and showing them some keywords on the top. And also I'm ordering the customer reviews so that the most relevant ones, the most insightful ones, are on top. Okay, again, an interesting machine learning application based on the data that you have as a distributor. And finally, of course, we're moving into more conversational voice-driven interaction. So Alexa, of course, with Amazon is something that you can just speak to and get the conversational interaction. Makes it easier for the customer to find something relevant. And again, any way that you can make it easier for your customer to find what they're looking for, okay, that ease of using your product is what's going to increase your sales. Using voice search is one method to make it even easier. We're going to look at some even more advanced ways related to visual search a little bit later in this talk. Good. So what we've done so far is we've moved through digital marketing, so acquiring the customer, point of sale, so encouraging the customer to make a purchase, to make more purchases, more items, or more interesting items, right? Interesting from our perspective. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of other decisions to make related to inventory and supply chain. Okay, so these are decisions such as which products should we keep in inventory? How much product should we keep in inventory? Where should we source it from? And where should we store it if we have multiple fulfillment centers? When do we remove inventory that hasn't been sold? Okay, and once an order has been placed, what are the logistics of how to ship that order? And how do we communicate expected delivery times in a way that the customer is not disappointed? So let me start with an example to motivate this. And this is an example of the Otto Group, which is one of the world's biggest e-commerce companies. So the Otto Group is based in Germany. It employs over 50,000 people. It operates in more than 20 countries. So a few years ago, the Otto Group realized that they were losing a lot of money in product returns. And so they did some analysis to say, why is it that people are returning so many products? What they discovered is they realized that most of the products that were being returned were those products that took more than 2 days to arrive. So customers who were left waiting for their products would either purchase the items elsewhere or else lose interest in the items and then return them. So the Otto Group realized that if they could more accurately forecast how much of a product would be ordered in the coming days, they could prepare their inventory, make sure they had enough on stock and ready to ship immediately as soon as the order came in. So after some work, they collected several hundred data points, including the several billion past transactions, online customer journeys, and a lot of other things, even like the weather data. They did the analysis, and in the end, they were able to build a machine learning model which could forecast 30-day sales with 90% accuracy. This forecasting allowed them to have sufficient inventory in place and had a huge impact on the bottom line. Okay, they cut down on the number of product returns by 2 million per year, and their overstock was also declined by 1/5. Okay, so the ability to make sure we have enough inventory by forecasting is extremely valuable. And again, to do that, we need the big data and we need the machine learning models. But even after we've made the forecast for how much to stock and we have enough inventory when the order comes in, we still have to figure out the best way to move our products between fulfillment centers, sorting facility, delivery stations, and eventually up to the customer. We want to do this quickly with minimum cost and minimum risk of having a delay. So in the case of a large company like Amazon, they need to take into account options to move the inventory over the land, sea, or air, utilizing their own or third-party resources. and also taking into account the different regulatory environments of each country in which they work. So to give you an idea of the scale and complexity of this, just their trucking routes alone, the number of ways to possibly route their inventory is more than the number of atoms in the visible universe. So it's an enormous problem. At its most basic level, it's a standard optimization challenge. It's a mixed integer programming challenge, they call it, which has been around for decades. But now, with additional complications that are involved with e-commerce and understanding forecasting and such, Amazon is doing this at a much higher level than the standard traditional academic methods. So they're using machine learning, they're using the big data to take into account the uncertainty of the order systems, uncertainty of vehicle maintenance, uncertainty again of even things like the weather, to come up with the best way to route their products to minimize the cost and decrease the delivery time. So for the first 15 years or so, Amazon used more manual rule-based order systems with limited economic inputs. Okay, so traditional ways that maybe a lot of companies are still using to order their supplies and route their deliveries. But obviously, this doesn't scale very well when it's very manual and such. And it's also not taking advantage of the new data sources and machine learning resources. So a little bit over 10 years ago, Amazon made a push to improve their use of data and analytics. And there's 4 primary ways I want to talk about: in the forecasting, in the purchasing decisions, in the placement of items across the centers, and in the fulfillment of the orders. So, like I said, about 15 years ago, they started to automate the way in which they would do the purchasing. So this is really interesting. So initially, what would happen is you would have a buyer responsible for purchasing a certain amount of the product. But now the machine learning models would say, I think I need this much of this product at this time, and they would automatically place those orders. The second thing is they were increasing, as inputs for this, they were improving their forecasting models. Okay, and again, we're talking about millions of items that have to be forecasted. And you have to take into account the seasonal demands, specific spikes in demand for products based on regional factors and holidays and things like that. They started developing systems which could, within a second or two, decide on the best way to send the inventory from the cross-deck to one or more of their fulfillment centers, to figure out the best way automatically to place their inventory geographically to minimize the cost of delivery and the time of delivery. Okay. And then fourth, they started developing tools that would process the millions of customer orders and decide how to best ship them, taking into account things like order splits and consolidation, while minimizing, again, the cost and satisfying delivery promises. So this first phase did a lot of optimization, a lot of automation, and it put the basic systems into place. It took about 3 years, after which they moved into phase 2. So in phase 2 of this process, what they did at Amazon is they improved the use of data and machine learning in several ways. First, they made it more scalable, so it could extend to new geographies with minimal amount of work. Okay. The second thing, and this is more subtle but also very important, is they really worked to earn the trust of their stakeholders within the company. Okay. So you're automating a lot of these decisions and realizing that there's always going to be mistakes. So you accept that, you keep the communication channels open, and you make sure your machine learning models are as explainable as possible to the internal stakeholders within Amazon. Third, they started extending the solutions to the fulfillment by Amazon sellers. And then fourth, of course, they continue to improve the models, finding better ways to use the big data, the machine learning, to analyze the product features, better recommendations, better forecasting. Around 2017, Amazon moved into what it considers its current phase of supply chain optimization, more accurate forecasting, multi-echelon inventory planning, increased network scale and complexity, closer integration of fulfillment by Amazon supply chains, stronger delivery guarantees, etc. Okay. So for example, better use of third-party carriers, but also using Amazon's own technology. They're using stronger, more refined mathematical optimization algorithms, grouping packages in a smarter ways for delivery, that type of thing. Okay. This also involves a lot of specialized hiring. Okay, that's also important to say. I'm not going to talk a lot about staffing today, but to make these systems work, it's a lot of hiring, a lot of staffing, a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error. Okay. Good. Fourth, delivery. Of course, the most important part of the supply chain from the customer perspective is the delivery point. Okay, and over the past 5 to 10 years, we're seeing not only Amazon, but other companies developing increasingly ambitious goals related to delivery, moving from 1 to 2 day deliveries down to even same day or within the hour deliveries for some services. So to this end, you've got special teams within the units who are developing special solutions. So at Amazon, as soon as the customer places an order, the inventory is reserved. And within a few minutes, their models start to evaluate thousands of different options for fulfilling that order. So the algorithms are going, and it may be that order must be split into multiple shipments from different fulfillment facilities. Okay, so it has to also reserve the space in its transportation network to ensure that the order can be delivered on time. Okay, so it's really important to keep control over your transportation network. So Amazon's developed what they call the customer order and network density optimizer. Okay, and this system's led to improved delivery routes by assessing and reassessing the customer orders before they leave a fulfillment center. And then that shipment plan can still be altered within a few hours, right? So if, for example, your neighbor places an order later that same day, the delivery plan may be updated so that the same carrier can bring both packages. Amazon also has a special team called the Delivery Experience Team. And their job is to make sure the packages arrive to the customer's doorstep on time in the most efficient way possible. Okay, so they also rely extensively on broad sets of data and different machine learning methods to manage that process. Okay, so they've got machine learning models that do everything from helping make recommendations that reduce the number of boxes a customer receives to optimizing package delivery speed. Okay, why is machine learning so important in this application? Well, there's a lot of uncertainties involved when you're delivering a product. There's different preferences, different fads, different trends, and again, the weather. And so you need to make sure that for orders like this, all of these variabilities are taken into account. And when it's a product that's going to take, let's say, more than 2 days to ship, there's even more variabilities. It becomes increasingly difficult to communicate to the customer when they should expect the package to be delivered. Okay, so they're building better and better predictions so that they can more accurately tell the customer when can you expect it. And what we see with commerce companies is it's really critical to maintain that communication with the customer, because customers get really frustrated if they expect a package on a certain day and it doesn't arrive on that day. So another example of what kind of things this team would do is during the holiday season, for example, in the past couple of years. They built machine learning models to help assist customers in discovering which items could be delivered on time for the holiday, so which would arrive in time by Christmas. So that's proactively helping the customer experience. Another example is on the mobile checkout page. So previously, the customers would see default delivery options, and the other options were folded into another page. And so there's a clear gap in how the customers selected options on mobile versus desktop. So what Amazon did was to adjust how the other options were made visible on mobile, and just kind of making it easier for the customer, making a better customer experience, specifically as it relates to product delivery. So those are some examples from Amazon, but we're seeing other companies do that too. And I mentioned previously a company that's operating in Northern Europe. In Northern Europe, there's a company which really was beating out Amazon quite heavily in terms of sales. And that company is called Coolblue. A very similar e-commerce company. But what they did in initial years, they depended on local postal services for delivery. And a few years ago, they wanted to move into same-day delivery, weekend delivery, and they developed their own delivery fleets. So they have not only delivery trucks, but in many cities, they have delivery bicycles. Okay? And with their own managed fleets of delivery, they can offer similar services that Amazon does with Prime, whether it's same day or weekend or holiday delivery. So we're seeing other companies, even regional players, developing similar capabilities. Good. Now we've worked our way down the funnel from customer acquisition all the way through product delivery, but I'd like to take the last few minutes to touch on two specific areas of interesting innovation. These are computer vision and robotics. When you think about how computer vision can be used, you can think about things like helping the customers to find products in a visual way, helping customers visualize how a product would look in an environment or in combination with other products, or maybe classifying or comparing products for use in forecasting, substitution, or categorization. Now, Amazon has already been allowing customers to do visual searches ever since 2014. Take a picture with my smartphone, search for that item on Amazon. It continues to develop this type of functionality, and even today, there's a relatively new functionality called View in Your Room. So this is a product that lets you use your smartphone to view how a product on Amazon could look in the environment around you before you buy it. So if you're curious whether a chair is the right size for your living room, or whether a coffee table is going to look good with your sofa, you can use your smartphone to check. Now, this is kind of a cool trick, but companies are using computer vision in even more advanced ways. If you've seen anything about the recent advances with deep learning, artificial intelligence, you'll know that there's something called deep learning, which can be trained to classify images. Okay. This can also be useful when we're creating the taxonomy to use in our online shopping platform, categorizing items into different categories for browsing. But what's more interesting perhaps is to look at something called image embeddings, which will help us compare products in more general ways. For example, consider the challenge of forecasting the sales of a completely new product, such as this designer sneaker. It's quite possible that I need to decide months in advance how much of this new product to order, but I don't have the historical sales figures to base my estimate on. What a company would typically do is to identify a similar product that was sold in the past, and then base their forecast on the past sales of that similar product. Now, I may choose a product that I think is comparable based on the name or obvious attributes, such as a previous version of that sneaker. This is very manual and it depends on a human interaction. But what I can also do is I can use computer vision algorithms to scan through tens of thousands of products in my database and have the computer vision algorithm pick out those items which it classifies as being similar to the new item. I can then use that to help base my forecast on. So these are, again, techniques that have been around for a number of years, although not all companies are using them. But of course, companies such as Amazon often have teams of scientists who are constantly developing new innovation, reporting about them on conferences, writing about them in papers. Let me briefly mention some of the projects that Amazon has been recently developing and talking about. One is to use AI to detect damages in packages before those packages are shipped. Of course, with billions of orders flowing through the fulfillment centers, there was always going to be some accidental damage. Part of what makes this challenging is you have to distinguish what damage is tolerable for the customer, such as only damage to the packaging, and which damage is really going to be something which impacts the customer experience. The other thing is when there's so many different types of products, it's very difficult to generalize and say what damage looks like on each different type of product and what damage is really impactful depending on the product. Now, the good thing about using a machine learning application for something like this is by nature, the longer you use it, the more training data it has and the better it gets. Okay. And again, this is a lot of image data, a lot of very diverse data. A good example of sort of the big data applications we have with visual product inspection. Another project first piloted in the Polish Amazon facility is using machine learning to replace barcode scanning. So essentially, I'm looking at the appearance and the dimensions of an item to classify what that item is. Okay, so they're already using this in Germany and in Spain, where it's being used to match to make sure that what comes through a conveyor belt tray is actually what's supposed to be there. The match rate for this is about 99% right now. So it's doing fairly well. Some of the more experimental projects, more being developed but not yet deployed, is where Amazon is looking at allowing ways to allow the customers to refine their queries by using verbal descriptions. So for example, following on a search, the customer could say, please show it to me in a different color or with a different pattern, right? So it's visual cues, visual descriptions, which help refine a search. Another project also in development is combination try-ons. So it allows the customer to see multiple products together on one model to see how they would fit together. And one final project I'll mention is one that uses AI to suggest complementary products based on visual features, color, style, and texture. Okay, so this is in some sense a cutting edge version of your classic cross-sell technique, very visually oriented. So we see that there are quite a few ways in which companies like Amazon are using computer vision coupled with the big data and artificial intelligence to improve many aspects of the sales and delivery funnels. Many of these computer vision applications are, of course, used to direct the actions of robots, which brings us to the sixth and final topic. I just want to touch on this briefly, but I want to talk about how robots are being used in the Amazon distribution centers. Okay, there's several types of robots in use with different tasks. For example, instead of employees searching for the goods on the shelves, the robots are bringing the products to the employees at fixed packaging stations. So you may have already seen some of these videos of fleets of autonomous mobile robots moving the pallets and packages around at the Amazon fulfillment centers. Some of these robots are designed to move around pods weighing close to 500 kilograms. And of course, they've got cameras on them that identify the people, the pods, the other robots, any obstructions, right? And they're programmed to make safe decisions quickly if they spot an obstacle. There's additional safety features such as being programmed to respond if the electricity goes out or the Wi-Fi crashes, right? So there's a lot of safety involved in that. There's also other kinds of robots, you'll see on the right, which take the finished parcels from the employees, sort them by zip code, delivery route within the fulfillment center. Currently, these robots navigate by reading floor markings that are laid out on the grids, but Amazon's currently testing a new class of robot that uses AI and computer vision to roam freely through the fulfillment center. Okay, and the advantages of roaming freely is they're better able to help the associates transport some of the oversized and unwieldy items that would otherwise need to be moved by hand. Okay, so that's moving the packages. And then there are other robots that pick up and process individual packages. Typically today they're using vacuum-like suction to do this. And that works well for some items not as well. So Amazon's also developing a prototype pinch grasping robot, which in preliminary tests has a 10-fold reduction in damaging certain items like books and boxes. And of course, there's also a lot of excitement about this programs to use drones or these small delivery robots for last mile delivery. Okay, but I don't really have time to go into the advantages and the challenges of those programs. Okay, so there we have it. That brings us to the end of sort of a whirlwind overview of some of the ways in which big data, machine learning, and advanced technologies are improving the ways in which Amazon is doing business. And in fact, many global distributors are doing business, right? None of this is really specific to Amazon. These techniques are being used by a lot of companies in various ways. There are some very challenging problems to address. Challenges that require not only creating specialized teams of smart people, but also creating an organization where the different parts of the company are communicating well with each other so that the solutions developed are best matched to the operational challenges faced. And so that in the end, sales are increased and the end customers are happy. Thanks again to each of you for your time. I wish you all success in your work and in your future endeavors. Feel free to email me if you have any specific questions or topics that you'd like to discuss.